Wake up, sleepyheads. It's party time.
If you're still listening, this is our final transmission.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Sam.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. We're here.
We're here.
That's it.
So, welcome everyone. Today we're talking about a fantastic horror movie that I'm almost reluctant to call horror for a lot of reasons, but nonetheless, we're calling it a horror movie today. It's Trick or Treat.
From 1986.
1986's Trick or Treat, otherwise known as Ragman.
Yeah, you watched it under the title Ragman, right?
I did. I was very surprised to see the opening credit crawl titled Ragman, because I was pretty sure I was watching Trick or Treat. But can you explain that, Jamie? Do you know where that is?
I mean, his nickname is Ragman.
Yeah, but why have two acting titles? Why is the movie out in...
I don't know, different territories. Maybe, I don't know which territories it was called Ragman in. It was called Trick or Treat, at least in the UK and in the US.
Interesting.
I have a Region 1 DVD, and that's Trick or Treat. Weird, bad title. Trick or Treat also, bad title.
Both terrible titles.
Yeah.
Both deeply off-putting.
Trick or Treat maybe says something like, oh, it's Halloween, let's watch a Trick or Treat Halloween movie. I mean, it's ostensibly that, but not really.
From a marketing point of view, calling a movie Trick or Treat maybe means that people will watch it at Halloween.
Exactly.
Sure. And yes, the movie is set at Halloween, but it has fuck all to do with anything else apart from, some brief mention. It's not like Halloween centric, is it? It's not. No. It's not even quintessentially like Halloween viewing. There's no we're not overrun with. Anyway, should we talk about the movie?
Yeah. Why don't you give us a synopsis?
Okay, in a small North Carolina town. I think it's North Carolina based on one license plate that you see in the whole movie. A young man called Eddie Weinbauer, aka Ragman, is having a rough time. He's bullied at school. His high school obviously sucks, and his life is kind of slowly capitulating around him. The only thing keeping him in the game is his love of a rock star called Sammy Kerr, who he's obsessed with, and he writes letters to the guy, and his only reason for staying alive, basically. He tells Sammy Kerr in these letters that he's keeping him in the game. So he's having a rough time, Eddie Weinbauer, and his hero dies. Sammy Kerr perishes in a fire, and throughout the course of the movie, Sammy Kerr is resurrected in a number of ways, namely through the stereo system of Eddie Weinbauer. And mayhem ensues. I think that's safe to say that's essentially the start, middle, and end of the entire movie.
Yeah.
So we get to know Eddie Weinbauer. We get to know the Ragman himself. We get deep under the skin of Sammy Kerr, and we meet a cast of crazy rock and roll characters throughout the movie Trick or Treat, aka Ragman.
Including Gene Simmons.
Including Gene Simmons and including Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah. Let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll chat the fuck out of this movie.
I'm exhausted. Let's take a break.
Come on, man. Does that thing even work? No. There's nothing out there. It's just dead air.
Psst, Sam.
Yo, what? Shh.
Do you know the song that we play at the start of the show?
Yes. It's great.
It is great, isn't it? That's by a band called the Lillingtons, and they've got an album which is one of my all-time favourite records, which is called Death by Television.
Oh, it's a great record.
Yeah, and it's out on Red Scare Industries.
No.
It came out probably, 20 years ago now? It's really fucking old.
It came out in the 40s.
Yeah. Well, Red Scare are celebrating 20 years, but it didn't come out in the year they started, so I don't really know how that works.
We can't do the maths.
No, and I refuse to. But Red Scare also sponsor this podcast. And Death by Television is full of bangers, and you should buy it. I mean, you probably already own it, right?
I already own it big time.
No, me too.
Fuck yeah.
But if you're listening to this, you should buy it. Check out the entire Red Scare back catalogue.
You really should.
You should.
Go do it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get back to the talking about films.
Let's talk louder.
Okay, so Trick or Treat, directed by Charles Martin Smith, who is a character actor. You might know him from American Graffiti. You might know him from The Untouchables. You might know him from Trick or Treat, where he cameos as the principal. Didn't direct an awful lot of movies. And looking at Trick or Treat, it's hard to figure out why, really. I think this film started off quite a lot of, or was pretty early doors in quite a lot of big careers.
Mm-hmm.
So it was written by Rhett Topham and Michael S. Murphy. Michael S. Murphy is just basically a producer now. I think he got out of writing pretty quick after this. Rhett Topham has written a few other things, 976 Evil, which is on the list, directed by Robert Englund, and also a couple of episodes of Freddy's Nightmares, continuing in that Robert Englund sphere.
Buds? Are they buds, Robert Englund? And
I mean...
Are they good chums, do you think?
You would assume so based on the fact that they worked together a number of times. But I don't know for sure.
Okay.
An interesting thing here is that the writers Glenn Morgan and James Wong, who went on to write some of the best X-Files episodes, they did an uncredited polish of the script where they sort of tightened up a lot of dialogue. Glenn Morgan also plays Roger, which is why he gets all the best lines, I'm guessing. But yeah, they wrote Squeeze, Tombs, Home, which is the most brutal X-Files episode.
Yeah, you're not lying when you say that these are the best X-Files episodes.
I mean,
these are the era peak.
Yeah, I mean, Darren Morgan, who I think is Glenn Morgan's brother, wrote all my favourite X-Files episodes, which is like Clyde Bruckman's or Jose Chung's from Outer Space.
Yeah, you love that shit.
I do. Like, I love how fucking goofy and great it is. Clyde Bruckman's is my favourite episode of the X-Files ever. I watch it, I don't know, maybe every 3 weeks.
Every 3 weeks?
Yeah, no, it's fucking great.
That's like as often as I take a vitamin. You're watching that episode.
They also wrote Final Destination together.
Mm-hmm.
And they show ran Millennium, which I loved Millennium. I don't know if you ever watched it.
I didn't know.
It was a bit of an X-Files spin-off. It had the Three Horsemen in it.
But they had their own spin-off, right?
They did have their own spin-off.
The Lone Gunman.
The Lone Gunman, yeah.
Yeah.
Not the Three Horsemen.
Three Horsemen. That's great.
But yeah, it had Lance Henriksen in it.
Yeah.
It was fucking great.
I think maybe I saw bits of that. I think maybe I confused it with Lone Gunman. But that's some serious writing pedigree, some great careers, and some stuff that really holds up. You know, if you're watching it every 3 weeks, that's serious quality.
Clyde Bruckman's is, I think, maybe not only the best episode of X-Files, but maybe the best episode of TV ever.
Wow, that sounds like a Patreon episode.
Yeah? All right. Well, I won't mention anything else about it then. Because I want your fucking money.
Damn right. Sign up to our Patreon.
But it also was shot by Robert Elswit, who had a major career, went on to basically work exclusively with Paul Thomas Anderson. So There Will Be Blood, Punch-Drunk Love, Magnolia, Boogie Nights, any other Paul Thomas Anderson films that you can probably think of.
I mean, these are huge. These guys have gone on to massive things. Not long after this, you know, we're sort of saying that Ragman / Trick or Treat kicks off some of these careers. These people are using a lot of their skill and pedigree in this movie, I think, albeit in a much more lo-fi, low-budge kind of way. But they definitely aren't like figuring out their craft in this movie. I don't think they're ready to rip, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I'm not sure about the cinematography. I'm not sure if it's especially good. I think it's pretty functional.
It's bad.
Yeah.
I'm going to go as far as to say it's bad, but in a charming way. We'll get to
absolutely. Robert Elswit only made 2 horror films back in the 80s, at least. It was this, and it was Return of the Living Dead 2.
Right.
And they kind of look identical in as much as they both look like fucking dog shit. Crazy to think that he would go on and make some of the most beautiful films of the 2000s.
Yeah.
And the 2010s. Like, There Will Be Blood is, I mean, it's fucking boring, but it's beautiful.
Oh, I think it's great. Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Like, I love it, but I think it's a film about characters and visuals and little else, really.
Yeah, and its biggest strength is, I think, the visuals. You know, I think it does have a really cool story and incredible performances, but yeah, it's noteworthy because of striking, arresting visuals. And for it to be from the same mind and hands as Trick or Treat is pretty astonishing. This movie has a very muffled, fuzzy-edged charm to it that looks and feels very VHS from start to finish.
Yeah. Well, I think that's maybe the difference between Charles Martin Smith, the guy from The Untouchables, and Paul Thomas Anderson.
I love the cover of this movie. I'd never heard of this movie until you slid it in front of me. And the cover that I had is a flaming pumpkin with Sammy Kerr shredding a solo, leaping out of the center, and the word Trick or Treat in cool, scratchy orange writing around the bottom edge. And it just looks amazing. I think it's immediately something that I want to watch as soon as I see the cover.
The DVD that I have has a terrible cover, which is just a picture of Gene Simmons and Ozzy Osbourne and maybe a spooky house.
That sucks.
Like, it's just like, watch this movie because these people are in it.
Yeah. Which I bet worked.
I mean, I bought it.
There you go.
And it's like, they're like billed as well. So it's not like, hey, they're in it. It's like, these guys get top billing. This is like Gene Simmons and Ozzy Osbourne. They're buddy cops. They solve the mystery of the fucked up bat or whatever. Like,
yeah, the mystery of the love gun. I think combined screen time of like 2 minutes, maybe. I mean, Gene a little bit more. Ozzy, thankfully, less.
Absolutely. Ozzy Osbourne is so bad in this. And like, it's very clear that they've done their best to cut around all of his best stuff and just leave it on the screen. And what is left is fucking awful.
It is trash, yeah. But he's bad, full stop. You know, I've never seen him on a TV and thought, wow, he's really good at that.
Well, he's good at being Ozzy in the Osbournes.
Yeah, I guess. I just can't stomach it. Like, it just rubs me up the wrong way.
Yeah. Gene Simmons, however, I think is great in this.
Pretty much fucking flawless.
Yeah, his like Wolfman Jack type DJ is spot on.
Well, he said that was his way of paying tribute to Wolfman Jack, right? Because he kind of grew up with that, and I think he nails it. And he's not, you know, I mean, it's not a nuanced performance by any means, but it's a very natural performance. He doesn't come across like a rocker who's trying his hand at acting. He comes across as like a pretty decent actor who, you know, we obviously know is at the time probably one of the biggest rock stars on planet Earth. So it's pretty incredible to see him just sort of slip into that role so seamlessly. And he doesn't ham it up that he's Gene Simmons. He really occupies that space and convincingly is Nuke, the DJ.
I think there's like a couple of like Wolfman Jack performances that I've seen in movies where people are playing like versions of Wolfman Jack, and this is by far the best. The other one that's kind of good is in a really bad fucking movie, which is it's Joe Manganiello in the Smiths movie, in the movie what's it called? It's a movie about the Smiths. It's like Airheads, but it's about the Smiths. It's awful.
Okay.
It's about like a bunch of Smiths fans that break into a...
Oh, yeah. I deliberately avoided it because it looked terrible.
I mean, it's bad, but it's fine. But it's bad. But the Joe Manganiello performance is really good.
Right.
And he's like the heart of that movie. And he's like explaining to these kids that are obsessed with the Smiths, and he's being forced to play the Smiths at his like rock and roll radio station. That like we're all singing about the same things, man. Like it's all the same stuff,
nice.
Which is a cool part of that movie. But again, the movie sucks.
Yeah, but I loved what Gene Simmons brought to that role because it could have been really throwaway. You know, it's a very kind of hero's journey type role. He's obviously the mentor, and he gives Ragman the acetate vinyl that ends up channeling Sammy Kerr's damned soul back into the plane of reality that we all exist on. And it's just I was really worried that it was going to be some obnoxious rock star performance, like coke-fueled maniac behavior from start to finish. But he's very mellow. It's almost feels very deliberate to take that opposite track to kind of throw people and keep people guessing. I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, I mean, when you sort of juxtapose that against the fact that it's like one of Michael Jackson's backup dancers playing Sammy Kerr.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like, you would absolutely think that Gene Simmons would be in that over-the-top, insane role. I hate Sammy Kerr in this movie.
Really?
Well, I like the character, but I think the guy, I just don't like him. Like I
fucking love him. Let's go.
I think he's too ugly and not charismatic enough to be believable as like a big rock star.
Okay.
Like, they wanted Blackie Lawless to play the character, Blackie Lawless from WASP. Blackie Lawless is fucking ugly, right?
Right.
But he is charismatic up the wazoo. It's amazing. And like with, what's his name, Tony Fields, you get a guy who sort of looks like a rock star, but doesn't. He looks like if you put Robert Davi's head on like a rock star's body. He looks like, I don't know, Lou Diamond Phillips, but I don't know if La Bamba was about Ozzy Osbourne. It's like it's not good. I just don't.
He looks like Steven Tyler with a hangover. I hear you, but that made it more believable to me because a lot of, like you've just rattled off a list, a lot of rock frontmen are not like classically handsome dudes. They're pretty haggard, and unconventionally attractive, I think, and it's the charisma that carries it.
Yeah, but he doesn't have the charisma.
But he has the anger, and that's crucial to his role, right? The whole point of his character is that he's angry, and he's so angry in life. He's railing against the system the whole time in life. And then when he dies, he's so fucking angry, he comes back to kill people. I think if you had a really charismatic front person who was also good looking, it would be harder to believe that they were so rage-filled that even after death, they're on a quest to punish the normies,
But like the specific normies of the one guy that writes to him.
True. Yeah. Who is also not really a normie.
Yeah. It's a pretty questionable relationship there.
Yeah, but I like that because you're not expecting the twist, which we'll talk about, obviously.
I wanted to ask you, are they corresponding before the events of this film?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I don't think that's the first letter. I think... So the opening scene is basically Ragman writing to Sammy Kerr, and it gives us a bit of background and a bit of insight into his life. We get this montage of his high school existence where he's fairly brutally bullied, and it culminates in, what is kind of a funny scene.
I think the phrase "fairly brutally" is quite funny.
Well, this is it, right? At first, it's quite playful bullying, you think, and it looks like he can kind of handle it, and it's par for the course. And then it gets really quite severe later in the movie. Exactly, yeah. They try to kill him a couple of times. But in this opening montage, which is, soundtracked by, we'll get to the soundtrack, but it's absolutely rocking. He gets pushed over when he gets out of the shower, and he somehow sprawls into the girls' volleyball training with the door slammed shut behind him, and the jocks keep his towel. So he's naked, laying face down in a which is funny at first, and then you realize it's actually really fucking painful and tragic. Yeah. And he has to spin himself around while laying on his front, keeping his dick to the floor, and shuffle out of the room. And someone takes a Polaroid of his ass. And, we see that his life is pretty miserable. And his vehicle to kind of deal with this is to write to his hero and, express the frustration, because Sammy Kerr went to the same high school and graduated and went on to be this incredible world-conquering rock star that he worships. And that's how we get into this movie. That's how we meet Ragman. It's how we meet his best friend Roger. It's how we meet Tim, his antagonist and bully. And it's how we meet Leslie, his love interest.
Yeah, I think just before that, it sort of sets out a bit of a stall with panning slowly over his posters in his bedroom, where he's got Anthrax posters. What else? There's a Judas Priest calendar. There's a Raven poster. A Dee Snider poster. Not Twisted Sister, just Dee Snider, which is weird.
Yeah, just Dee. He's got a thing for frontmen.
Yeah. So it sort of sets out its stall quite early that this is you're meant to think that Sammy Kerr is on this level. I'm not sure if I do. I think maybe he's locally famous. He's playing at high school on Halloween in
Yeah, I don't get the impression at any point that he's necessarily Gene Simmons level rock star.
Oh.
But to this kid, he's done the thing that he wants to do, which is get out of this town and get away. And he obviously loves his music and has an enormous poster of him right above his bed. What kind of posters did you have growing up?
Anything that I would cut out of Kerrang. So I was really obsessed with, there was a shop in Wrexham that sold old Kerrangs, 80s Kerrangs. And so I was big into 80s stuff. When if you tune into this week's Patreon episode, you'll hear me wax lyrical about 80s metal. And Sam, you're going to talk about some 80s metal as well, I guess. But
I'm going to try and play along. I'm going to join in.
So I used to cut out all the posters from Kerrang, some modern stuff, some stuff from the old days. Did you ever read old Kerrang? Pandora was called Pandora Peroxide.
Yeah, my buddy's dad collected every Kerrang from issue 1.
Nice.
He collected every Kerrang from issue 1, and he videotaped off of Top of the Pops every rock performance from the dawn of time. So just had this curated collection of all the best rock performances from Top of the Pops, plus every Kerrang ever. It was amazing.
I wonder if you used to watch Popped In, Crashed Out at 1:30 on a Saturday morning, which was the pop quiz show hosted by then editor of Kerrang, Phil Alexander. It was great.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And they'd have I don't know, rock guests on it. It was a panel show, but for rock musicians. But they were never
chaotic.
They were never good. Yeah, it was pretty chaotic. It was on at 1:30 in the morning on Friday night or Saturday night or whatever. I remember Queen Adrena being on it. I loved Queen Adrena.
Wow, I bet you did.
I feel like Ginger from the Wild Hearts was on it quite a lot, but maybe just because it was just the time.
The reason I ask about posters is I was obsessed with having posters on the walls that accurately reflected what I was listening to at the time. And I'd do exactly what you did. I'd buy all the magazines and take all the posters out, and I would go to HMV and go through the racks obsessively. And I had an enormous Beavis and Butthead poster that I was really proud of. When I went round to my fiance's childhood bedroom for the first time, we'd already been together for several years, and I went round and she invited me into her old bedroom. The first thing I saw when I walked in was a Sammy Kerr-sized poster above her bed of Denzel Washington. And I was like, oh, shit.
Oh, no.
Okay. I don't. So I thought that was pretty wild.
That's such a weird poster. Just like...
I know, right?
Wow.
He's smouldering in a white vest as well with his tattoo, like sticking his tattoo forward. It's quite the sight. Still there to this day.
King Kong ain't got nothing on him.
I offered to put it in our bedroom,
Yeah?
But, no, she said no. Weird.
What were we talking about? Posters. Yeah, so he has all these posters in his room.
Yeah.
None of them are of Denzel Washington. So that's how we set out the stall of the movie. And then you find out about his bullying, which does escalate slowly throughout the movie. Not that slowly. There's the he gets a bit of confidence in that one scene, and there's that whole comedy chase scene, which is pretty fun.
The chase scene I think is fantastic. It's kind of a change of pace and a slight change in tone, but it doesn't feel like it doesn't belong. It feels a little bit slapstick at times, but it's really well done. It feels evocative of 80s teen comedies of the time.
Yeah.
But it still has that heavy metal vibe, and you're still invested, I think, in the chase. It doesn't feel so silly that you don't think there's any stakes, because you know that if they catch him, he's done.
Yeah.
He's absolutely done.
Like, they've already tried to drown him at this point, so you know that he's in real trouble if they catch him.
Yeah, he gets invited to this weird break into the school swimming pool after hours party.
Yeah.
Where loads of people are skinny dipping and there's loads of drinking, and it's actually shot quite nicely, I thought. It looked like it was awful to shoot because the light looks horrendous. But they do manage to get all the cool water ripples playing on the ceiling and on people's faces and stuff, which I thought made up for it big time. And that's a tough scene. There's a really good shot in that where he is pushed into the water by Tim, his bully, and he has his backpack and heavy coat on, and he just fully sinks. And you get this great shot from under the water looking up at the gang of bullies on the edge of the swimming pool, which I thought was a really lovely shot. And then Leslie dives in to save him. You get to see her swimming down towards him. I thought that was quite well done, and I bet it was a real challenge given the budgetary restraints.
Well, so not only did he have just his backpack on, they put a weight in his backpack so he would fully sink.
Yeah, they slip a weight in there and then push him into the water. That's, desperately cruel. And by this point in the movie, we've seen quite a lot of Ragman's life.
Yeah.
We've seen, so they punch a hole in his milk so it all spills down his top. And his revenge is to flip the tray in the guy's face the next day, I think, and then this chase ensues. But we also see what I find to be one of the most convincing relationships in the movie is his relationship with his friend Roger.
Yeah.
I think Glenn Morgan does an amazing job as Roger, and you're right, he probably gave himself the best lines, but he carries this movie for me. Without him, Ragman starts to get a bit 2D, and you bring Glenn Morgan in, who is genuinely a good friend. He's always offering to be there for Ragman if he needs to talk. He does his bidding, like gets him out of a bind here and there, and he really puts himself on the line at the end of the movie. So love that character, love that relationship. So you see that Ragman has stuff going for him in his life. His mom obviously cares about him. He does have a love interest. He's maybe not as suicidal as his melodramatic letters to his rock star hero suggest, but he is being, furiously bullied when this chase ensues. But it's great. He shouts, "Eat this," and flips the tray into Tim's face. And it's kind of High School Movie bliss, the way they're running around. It's a classic run around with, when they run through the library, they sprint in and then they go into a stiff walk as they walk past the librarian.
Yeah, I love that.
It's great. And then they sprint off again. And it's genuinely funny. When they burst into the band rehearsal and they collapse into some of the musicians, a kid gets fully beamed in the face with a cymbal.
God.
Like it hits him edge on straight into his cheekbone, and he's like diving off to one side. So stuff like that just makes it look and feel really real. Awful cameras, but great shots. Yeah, some really good stuff in there.
And it has that sort of really fun twist ending where they barge in on what they think is Eddie, and it's the teacher's lounge, and they spray the teachers with a fire extinguisher or whatever. Great.
Yeah, it's great.
Good.
Really good. And a full setup. Yeah, Ragman sets that up. He's a schemer. We start to see him as a guy who can put stuff together. This is the part of the movie where we're supposed to realize he can stand up for himself, but he's cunning and wily more than strong, and that kind of plays into his I don't know, he's just kind of a playmaker in the movie rather than a heavy hitter, and we start to see that early on. Good character development, I think.
Yeah.
All of that serves a purpose. It's not just throwaway, silly stuff. It's just done really well.
Yeah, it's worth saying that Eddie Weinbauer is played by Mark Price, who is the sort of nerdy neighbour kid in Family Ties, which is kind of the role that Roger plays in this. But I really buy him as like that mosher outcast, because I don't know about you, but when I was 15, I guess I thought I was Gene Simmons, but I definitely looked more like this kid.
Oh, for sure. He's so convincing because he's really kind and softly spoken and nice. And most metalheads who are truly metalheads that you meet are way more like that than they are obnoxious party animal, municipal wasteoids. You know, he's super convincing to me because he is a total outcast, but only because he listens to a type of music that people in the mainstream don't like. He's not a devil-worshipping psychopath who, you know, cuts up animals in his spare time. He's just a really nice kid.
But Sammy Kerr is.
Yeah. Yeah, Sammy Kerr's a proper angry psycho, yeah.
The implication is, and it's kind of subtle in the movie, is that there's like an opening monologue, which I guess is meant to be Sammy Kerr, where he says, I wrote it down here, go bear these tidings to great Lucifer, say he surrenders up to him the soul, so he will spare him 420 years. Give me whatsoever I demand to slay mine enemies and aid my friends, and always be obedient to my will. Is that him in the hotel room, like, doing this incantation so he can, I don't know, come back and beat up some bullies in a high school?
The hotel room scene is fantastic. It's the first really scary part of the movie. It's the first hint that this is a horror movie, really. We see Sammy Kerr sitting cross-legged in a pentagram that's on fire in a hotel room with his kind of presumably bandmates, but possibly like satanic minions behind him moving around in that kind of jerky, you know, Red Lodge kind of way. Black Lodge, sorry. Red Lodge is a town in Suffolk. And he's talking backwards in that creepy record played backwards way. And that's obviously his what we see of his death scene. Essentially died in a hotel fire. And it is really creepy, and it does start to hint that the movie has a much darker side than all this high school bullying hijinks stuff. And yeah, I think that is Sammy Kerr's voice. It's supposed to be like a biblical incantation about Satan and loyalty to your master, etc. And we find out later on that Sammy Kerr's big thing is that if you're not loyal to him, you will be destroyed. So yeah, I think that's pretty safe to say that is the connective tissue there. That's his incantation at death.
I just find it so weird that you would sacrifice yourself specifically so you can come back and kill some bullies at a school. Not your bullies, just like some kids at a school. Like 16-year-old, you're 38. He's 38. He's the same age as I am now.
Yeah, same.
If I was still brooding about the people that bullied me in high school, or the people that bullied a kid that I know, who is no relation to me, just some kid that writes me a letter every now and then.
Yeah.
I find it to be a problematic relationship. I almost on a par with the problematic relationship between Nuke and Eddie as well. Like,
you think that's problematic?
Like, he's in his 40s. Why is he friends with a 15-year-old, 16-year-old kid?
He's like the wizened old man who takes him under his wing. He's not like fingering him.
I mean, he might be.
He might be.
I didn't
read it like that. I didn't read that Sammy Kerr deliberately perished in a hotel fire in order to come back and help Ragman. I read it as he died accidentally in a hotel fire when he was worshipping the devil, shout at the devil style, and he was resurrected fortuitously by Nuke handing the accursed acetate to Ragman.
Okay.
That was Ragman's his conduit to come back into reality and wreak havoc and just sort of blast out his unfocused rage. But that's just how I read it. How you read it is just as valid because it's never defined in the movie. We just get one flashback.
It isn't defined in the movie, and it's just pretty weird.
It's pretty tenuous, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't get hung up on it because I just thought, he's back. That's what I wrote in my notes.
It's just weird to me that he's like, okay, I'm back. What is the best use of my time now I've returned to Earth from beyond the grave? I guess I'll kill a bunch of teenagers at a high school dance.
I'll play that gig that I was supposed to play.
Like, literally, with a band who I've never met, who know all the songs somehow.
From time to time, I would quite like to die instead of playing a gig. And he forfeits that excuse and comes back from the dead to play the gig. It makes no sense. Yeah, I just don't care about that because the way he comes back is kind of cool. And I like that the record is a conduit for his tormented soul. And I like that Ragman is kind of his pawn as well as his summoner. The movie has to have a bad guy. Or not a bad guy. It has to have an antagonist of some kind. It has to have an evil. We don't really have that until Sammy Kerr starts to turn on Ragman. We have this like union of quote-unquote good versus evil, Ragman and Sammy versus the bullies and versus everything that's wrong with society and versus the persecutors and the oppressors. And then that dynamic slowly twists and warps in quite a clever way. And what we actually have is a new enemy who was once our hero, essentially. So I quite like that. It does keep you on your toes. You can kind of see it coming a little bit because Sammy Kerr is never at any point a goodie. You know, he's always doing evil things, but he's doing them to the right people in the beginning. So I like how that works, and I don't question it too much. I think he died by accident and used Ragman as his vehicle back into reality. And it might be that we're underplaying the significance of Halloween here. Halloween is when the veil between the living and the dead is at its thinnest. Maybe it's only possible for Sammy to come back around Halloween.
Yeah, maybe. In order for him to come back, they need to play the record backwards.
At midnight on Halloween, or whatever it is.
Well, they play it backwards before that, and that's when he first comes back. And then they always have to play the record whenever he comes back, even if it's on cassette. They play so much of that record backwards, and it makes sense that it must be awful to listen to the right way round.
I bet it rips.
I mean,
I bet it's great. I bet it's sludge.
And then also, Nuke is going to play it backwards at midnight on Halloween. It's not Halloween anymore at midnight, but whatever. And then also,
good point.
That's just bad fucking radio, right?
It again, yes and no. Like in the context of the movie, I'm so into it because I'm like, whoa, that's so fuck you. I'm gonna play a totally unheard, 1 in a million dead rock star's last record that no one's ever heard backwards first before I play it forwards because it's midnight at Halloween. That's seriously metal. I was really into that.
I mean, it's pretty metal, but it also is pretty nonsensical.
But it would make you laugh if it happened in real life, right? If you were listening to radio on Halloween, like, yeah.
I wouldn't listen to the 50-minute full record backwards. Do you know what I mean?
I thought it was like a single. I didn't realise it was a whole album.
Can we talk through, when Sammy Kerr returns, can we talk through his powers?
His powers?
Yeah.
He has the power to shoot electricity?
He does. He has the power to possess machinery, a car, a lathe.
Great line in the lathe scene. Did the headbanger bang his head? I thought that was great.
He has the power to pull people into speakers.
He does. He has the power to pull people out of televisions or kill them through them.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
He has the power to shoot electricity out of his fingers at will, also out of his guitar, but also sometimes he needs to put his finger in a socket.
Dumbest scene in the movie by a country mile. I found that to be such a ruinous move in an otherwise really smooth sequence. Sammy Kerr sucks his finger while holding, who is it? Tim. Holding Tim up against the wall and puts his finger in a plug socket and electrocutes the guy through it. It fucking blows. That is a bad move. I'm going to guess that you liked it.
No, I hate it.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
It's stupid.
It's really stupid.
But like, because he doesn't need to do that. He's been firing electricity apropos of nothing for ages.
Yeah, and you want to see Tim fucking annihilated, right? You hate Tim by this point. He hasn't just bullied the hero of the movie the entire way through. He hasn't just been a dick to him, but he bowls into a girl's bathroom, pins her against the wall and kisses her against the will, and then slaps her as hard as he can. Just sucks front to back. And all he gets is finger licking good electrocution against the wall. I want to see his head blow up. I want to see him suffer, and we don't get it. It's one of the only pulled punches of the movie that didn't work for me.
It's like the powers are all over the place. He also can turn into a smoke monster and have smoky sex with teenage girls in cars.
What did you think of that scene? Because I thought that was bonkers.
It's such a weird product of like 80s movies. It's like a thing that you would only write if you'd only seen 80s movies. Do you know what I mean?
If that was your frame of reference.
Yeah, like we fed an AI 500 80s movies and it came up with this headphones demon sex scene. Like,
so she's laying in a car having just fucked Tim, and Tim bails. And is it Tim?
They've not fucked yet.
Oh, okay.
They were getting to it, and he decided that he needed a piss. So she puts on
Right.
the tape that was given to him by Ragman in her 80s headphones with the little fluffy ear bits that we all had back in the late 80s, early 90s. And she's sort of seduced emotionally, but also physically by the music. There's like a wispy little smoke monster that's like slowly taking her clothes off. Like, it's obviously creepy as fuck, but it's played like it's meant to be sexy.
Yeah, it makes you feel weird. It's Ray, the Ray from Ghostbusters scene where he gets a Hummer from a ghost and in a kid's movie. Except it's way like her eyes don't cross. She's massively into it.
Until she sees that it's a giant demon with a big tongue.
Which never comes back.
Never
makes
comes
no
back.
sense. A giant rubber demon in the car in front of her, just like flopping its tongue around. Yeah, out of nowhere for about 2 seconds and then gone forever.
I mean, it's gratuitous and it's super weird. I mean, it's kind of great.
It's our only gore scene when Tim gets back in the car and pulls the headphones off her head. It's just
They've melted her ears. Oh,
yeah,
so good.
Gooey, sloppy ear mess. It was brilliant, really good.
Like I think the gooey ears when he pulls the headphones off her ears is like my defining image of this film. I think that's the coolest visual in
it's
the
pretty
entire
good. It's
movie.
like melted marshmallow. It's really well done. It's great. Some solid makeup work there. And I like that whole scene. It just feels a little bit strange in the context of the movie. It doesn't make any sense, and I think you're right. I think it's just, gratuitous for the sake of gratuity.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about Alice Nunn playing Mrs. Sylvia Cavell. Alice Nunn, we all know as Large Marge from Pee-wee's Adventure. She doesn't do a lot. She's not in it a whole bunch, but she is one of Sammy Kerr's victims, I think, because he does reach into the telly, pull her out, and blow her
She's
up.
tiny. Yeah.
Yeah, she is. She's teensy. Yeah.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
Like all the horror scenes in this are basically played for laughs, apart from the demon car long tongue scene that we just talked about.
Yeah, the ears.
Yeah, it's so goofy and funny, but like I think she just explodes, right? Once he pulls her out the TV. I think the big issue with this is that everyone just sort of explodes.
Yeah, except the guy you want to explode.
Well, he explodes too, but like they just sort of disappear and leave their clothes behind. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
oh, dude, when Sammy Kerr gets the cop and it pans down to his boots and then he explodes and it pans up and he's just gone and his boots are smoking.
I mean, I love that.
Yeah, it's superb. I absolutely love it.
I mean, that's a shot ripped directly from Repo Man, which I love as well.
Yeah, it's purely, it's about as 80s as it gets. It's as cheap as it gets, and it's very
I
Repo
think
Man.
sometimes that's better than showing the explosion.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's fun.
The feeling that you get, like the gun drops on the floor and you're like, oh shit, something's happened. And then the boots are smoking. Smoking boots are one of my all-time favourite tropey visuals. I love it.
Yeah, it's
but
great.
yeah, like at the Halloween concert dance scene, when he's just sort of firing his electric guitar, firing the electric into the crowd. People are just like disappearing and leaving their clothes behind.
Some kids blow up. There's a couple of good detonations.
Yeah, not enough though.
Not enough, no. Probably budget, but like the kids that do blow up, it's great, and it does make you want all of them to blow up. I was kind of hoping for all of the kids to die, as I always do in every movie, but mostly just for parity. Like the kids that die are totally randomly blown up by Sammy Kerr, and some of them could have been good kids. It's probably better that you just blow them all up and burn the school down, but he doesn't. He lets the vast majority of them escape.
I believe the phrase is, kill them all and let God sort them out.
Well, he does. Sammy Kerr has a couple of great lines in this that really creep you out. When he's first talking to Ragman through the stereo, there's a great thing where the graphic EQ, it like twitches up when he says certain things. He says, fuck 'em, and it goes to full on the EQ, which looks great. Yeah. And he does say, there's a really great scene where, I think it's great, Sammy Kerr is trying to get Ragman to do his evil bidding, and they're having a bit of a shouting match, and Ragman's mom wants to come into his room, but he won't let her, and Sammy starts imitating his voice and saying, come in, mom, and he's like, don't come in, mom, and it's pretty funny, but it's also quite scary. And there's a bit where he says, let her in, we'll nail her too. It's just really good. It's really ominous. Those are the only bits that really unnerve me. There's a great low humming kind of score thing happening in the background. Sammy's voice is pretty creepy, and it's all getting a bit out of control. And we feel for Ragman because we really like him. We've seen him as like a kind, compassionate, misunderstood, only rocker in the high school character, and we don't want him to be blown up by Sammy Kerr's Electric Dick. So we're worried for him at that point, I think, and that the movie does that well.
The thing that really unnerves me is probably the opening scene where Eddie is writing this letter to Sammy Kerr, and he's using these phrases like deadheads and airheads, and he quotes Sammy as saying that Rock's chosen warriors will rule the apocalypse or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I feel like that stuff plays pretty differently in like a school shooting every 6 minutes economy that we currently live in. Like post say Columbine, that stuff feels pretty icky.
It does. Yeah, it's really uncomfortable.
Yeah, and it's like, I know, the whole plot of like outcast bullied kid gets his revenge on the kids at school by, you know, killing them all indiscriminately.
Yeah.
It does feel a bit odd in a world where that stuff happens and happens so fucking regularly. But
it's cool that this is done in a really campy way. It's I think it's healthy school shooter escapism. It's and it's obviously it's pre, like you said, it's before school shootings become so common that it's, you know, it's something we're all constantly aware of. And it kind of harks back to maybe a slightly simpler time, because we're able to go on this very silly, campy journey through, you know, a revenge tale about a bullied kid without necessarily the baggage of you know, modern school shooting mayhem.
Yeah, I guess this is like the escapism that ultimately might not lead, I'm not blaming this film for anything, but like the sort of, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I could do this sort of escapism that you and me and basically everybody who was bullied at school had. Like, they'll fucking get theirs one day. No, they won't. They're probably fucking CEOs now, and I have a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the real life message. The real life message is that you have to persevere and find the things that you love in life and make the most of your existence, right? But the movie message is rock stars come back from the dead and help you kill them all. You know, that's what movies are, right? They're fun. They're supposed to be, you know, these kind of movies are supposed to be a silly goose time to escape that brutal punishment.
Sure, but I think like the feeling that this taps into is the same feeling that maybe some people who are less hinged can. Do you know what I mean? Like they might be like, well, I feel like they're gonna get theirs, and I've also got access to a fuckload of guns. So
I like less hinged as a polite way of saying mental. I think that's great. Less hinged. I feel pretty less hinged these days. Yeah, it's a tough one. It does definitely stir up some of those feelings in the pit of your stomach. And you're right, especially in that letter writing scene. It made me think more along the lines of obsessive fandom than it did along the lines of committing violent acts on fellow human beings. Like, did you ever write to any of your heroes, any rockers, any musicians?
I wrote an email to Pauly Shore once.
Wow. What were you saying to Pauly Shore?
I don't know, just how much I loved California Man or Encino Man if you're American.
I love California Man, by the way. And
how much I loved Son-in-Law and all of the movies that he made in the sort of early 90s, and how he was a big, I don't know, inspiration to me to be myself.
Fuck yeah, dude.
In the face of, you know, all these deadheads and airheads, and Encino's chosen warriors will rule the apocalypse, and
you and Brendan Fraser will ride to the salvation of all of us deadheads.
Absolutely. Me and Linkovich Chomovsky.
Yeah, that's so great.
Taking back what's ours. Did you ever write to anyone?
I basically my whole life, I think I wrote letters to like people I admired that I didn't send. But I didn't write my first properly mailed fan letter until I was 37 years old. And I wrote to Keith Morris. I managed to find Keith Morris's address through a friend of a friend, and I wrote him like a 2-page letter just saying like, you're fucking great. Like, I read his book, My Damage, and it's one of the best rock books I've ever read. And I thought, what a tale of you just being a complete piece of shit and kind of persevering and working on yourself and becoming, you know, one of the craziest, raddest punks around. And I just wrote him a letter saying, thanks for being cool.
Did you get anything back?
Fuck no. I don't think Keith Morris even checks his mail. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I didn't get anything back from Pauly Shore either.
I think it's way more likely that Pauly Shore would write back to you than Keith Morris would write back to anyone.
I feel like, do they both live in LA? They
Yeah,
do, don't they?
yeah. Keith
So
does. Yeah.
maybe they're like sitting together being like, I got this fucking letter. Oh, do you know what? I got this email.
Imagine
These
if
fucking
Keith Morris and
guys.
Pauly Shore hang out. That would be amazing. So it's probably worth mentioning one of the pivotal points in this movie is that Ragman asks Roger if he'll go and retrieve the killer tape, the tape that melted the girl's ears. And Roger kind of reluctantly goes on this mission. It's one of my favorite scenes. Roger kind of decked out in like what nerdy Roger thinks is like criminal gear. Like he's got his beanie hat and a coat hanger, and he rides his bike over to Tim's house, and he jimmies his way into the car and gets the tape back. And that's another moment where we get to see that friendship really, showing its strength. And the whole time he's saying, I'm going to get killed. I'm going to die. And he's using the coat hanger and he can't get in, and then he realizes it's unlocked and he lets himself in. And it's another bit of comic relief. Interesting, this movie has so much comic relief when there's not actually that much dread to offset it. So it has a lightness to it in moments like that.
It makes it feel more like a comedy than a horror film with comedy elements to cut through it. It's like, it's just a comedy.
Yeah. Dare I say, it's light-hearted horror. Kind of is, right? But he then is told to destroy that tape by Ragman, but Sammy Kerr tells him if he destroys it, he'll kill him.
Yeah.
So Roger's in a tricky spot. Roger ends up going to the high school dance and doing Sammy's bidding and playing it at the Halloween dance.
This sort of bit of plot facilitates my least favourite exchange in the entire movie.
Come on, what you got?
So when he's about to play the tape, he's like mulling over whether he's going to play the tape at the dance.
Yeah.
Leslie comes up to him and says, Judas. And he's like, what? And she's like, Judas Priest, you going to play it? Like,
yeah,
that's not how that conversation's ever going to fucking go.
No, that's stretched a little bit. I mean, the high school dance scene, my note is fucking great for this. It just says, Halloween dance looks weak as fuck. But it's one of my favorite lines is when Wesley, the MC compere of the Halloween dance or whatever, is up there talking to the crowd, and he's heckled by these two guys up in the balcony, and one of them goes, eat it, Wesley. And the other one goes, yeah, Wesley, eat it raw. That's great. Eat it raw. That's so good.
I feel like the dance scene, the Halloween dance scene, feels like the climax of the movie.
Yeah, it feels like the Carrie moment.
Yeah, and then it's over, and you've got 30 minutes left of like scampering around trying to do stuff, and it never quite reaches the heights of that moment, of that section again.
Yeah, it's my only major criticism of the movie. Not that I'm in any position to suggest it's any different, but if you just switch it, it works. If the big chase scene leads up to the dance, and then everyone gets blown up, but then Sammy is vanquished ultimately by Ragman's innate goodness, then you've got a real resolution and a great arc for everyone and a decent build-up. But yeah, you're right. We get this huge smash fest at the Halloween dance where Sammy's resurrected in spectacular fashion. I know you don't like him in this movie, but everything he does on that stage is really very cool to me.
But he bangs his leg for too long.
Very long time, yeah. He is pumping his fist against his thigh for 3 times longer than he needs to.
Absolutely.
But because he's a dancer in real life, his stage stuff is great. He's really strong. He's very toned. Everything he does, he's convincing. You don't see many people performing music in movies that aren't musicians do it convincingly. Their hands are always wrong. They're always doing something that's a total giveaway. I think he just nails it. He looks amazing.
Yeah, I disagree. I don't think the presence is there. I don't think...
That's wild to me.
Maybe they should have made it so he was better looking before he died, and then he came back all ugly like he is in the film.
He is burned, yeah. Yeah, I agree, yeah.
But like, one thing that I did really rate in the dance scene is when they're playing that one song that they play, which... I think the music in this, we'll talk about that maybe just next. But I think the idea that the people in the crowd are stoked to be hearing this song and they're fucking singing along. Yeah. It's like, yeah, this feels real now. Yeah. Like over the top of the track that's playing, there's like a hum of like people singing the same words. And it sounds like it's been recorded in a crowd. Maybe it was actually done there, I don't know. But like, it makes it feel like, yes, this is a real song that people really like, as opposed to like when you hear rock songs in movies and it's like, it never really sounds like an actual song that people would write.
Yeah, it's got to be a really special for the movie song for it to resonate.
Yeah.
Like Fever Dog or something from Almost Famous. Yeah. That's really memorable. But for every Fever Dog, there's a million dog shit movie songs that we're supposed to believe all these teenagers love. And yeah, I totally agree. It's a very convincing show, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Especially compared to some other crap you see. Do you know what I mean? Like,
The only thing that isn't convincing is why the rest of the band know the songs.
yeah, the Kickers, who
Kickers.
their singer is like blown to smithereens, and Sammy Kerr replaces him, and nobody cares. They're just like, oh, well,
Nobody cares.
I guess Derek's dead. Let's carry on. It's great.
Yeah, and the band keep playing throughout loads of people dying.
The massacre, yeah, they're just like. But I mean, again, I can relate to that. If I was in a band and magically an amazing singer appeared in front of me and started blowing up the audience, I would play my ass off for the next 2 hours until every motherfucker was dead.
Yeah, just like a dead vocalist appears in front of you.
Yeah.
It's like it's fucking Bon Scott or something. You're like, okay.
Yeah, especially if it's teenage
I guess
kids.
I know Highway to Hell now. Like,
yeah, I guess that's in the set now, guys. It's like Back to the Future again. It's like, you know, they all know Johnny Be Good out of nowhere. Those kids getting blown up is one of the most satisfying payoffs of the whole movie for me. It's great. It goes to campy fun, detonating human bodies levels. Sure, they don't deserve it, but the scene itself, I mean, they deserve it by virtue of being teenagers at a high school dance, in my opinion. It just all comes together in that scene, and that should be the end. You're totally right. Pacing, it throws everything off. It throws a big spoke in the momentum of the movie. The only time it wanders off course for me is this protracted chase scene with multiple venues and multiple resurrections. It does serve to build the tension of when they finally go to the radio station, which I think, again, is a great scene. It's really beautiful. I think that is shot well. The radio station itself is a really cool location with the huge lit up sign outside and the giant radio mast, the WZLP all lit up. It looks very lived in. It looks like a little chef with huge neon letters on top of it. I think it looks amazing. But yeah, Eddie's speeding in the dark, goading Rock's chosen warrior. And that's a cool scene if it leads up to a big climax.
Puns,
yeah,
because he gets sort of flushed down the toilet for a bit, which I guess is an Elvis joke.
Let's talk about that scene, because I think that's unforgivable. Sammy Kerr is supposed to be this like semi-omnipotent, all-powerful, resurrected satanic rock demon firing electricity out of his body and blowing people up. He trips, his hand lands in a toilet, and he rolls around screaming, and someone flushes him away. That is absolutely ridiculous.
I mean,
don't defend it. You're going to defend it, aren't you?
I'm not going to defend it because I think it's nonsense, but I will advocate for it in this moment, because sometimes, Sam, you need to be kept in check, frankly.
Okay.
If he's made of pure electricity, or if there is electricity coursing through his veins, water is going to present a problem to him.
Yes. But why have him trip and put his hand in a toilet at all? Why is that in the movie?
Because they were doing an Elvis thing. They were doing a huge rock star being stopped by the toilet. Like, literally brought to his knees by the toilet.
That's pretty thin, Jamie. I gotta say.
I think that's what they were doing. I think that's what they're going for.
Good Lord. But the pun in question is Ragman trying to coax Sammy out so he can kill him. And he says, how about that toilet? You know, you look kind of flushed back there. Oy, oy, oy. I mean, I give it a pass because it's Eddie Weinbauer.
He's not Don Rickles, is it?
No, he's not got the comedy chops to really pull that off. He escalates his goading there in a quite a convincing way. He is screaming and he says, what are you without your fans? And then the thing that really gets him, that makes Sammy leap into the car with him, that ultimately leads to his demise, is Rock's chosen warrior is nothing more than a fucking wimp poser. And as soon as he says poser, that's what pulls him out into the car. Sammy Kerr can't handle being called a poser.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's pretty
And
great.
then they kill off Nuke off screen.
Very lame. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to see Gene Simmons die spectacularly as well.
Yeah, I guess they only had Gene Simmons for like half a day or something.
Must be. Yeah, they just have a smouldering corpse in a chair, which does look pretty good, to be fair.
Like, sure, but feels a little bit of a rip-off.
I think this is probably going to be the one and only time in our entire podcast career when I am not satisfied by the body count and not satisfied by the lack of dead teenagers.
I mean, there are loads of dead teenagers. They just don't die in a way that is, appealing to me.
Yeah, more dead teenagers, I say. The thing that hangs me up on this movie is a lot of the camera work is a bit too janky to be fun. Like, sometimes it's really shaky, it's out of focus, it wanders, and it doesn't ruin the movie in any way, because we love that shit, right? That's why we're here talking about this movie. But it is a little bit amateurish and hard to excuse, given that it made the final cut. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think those are choices, but I think they're the wrong choices.
Yeah.
I don't think anything that we see or any of the shots that we see in this movie are an accident. I just think they're the wrong choice.
You see it a lot in movies of this type where the production value is low, but the heart of the movie is massive, and the story's ambitious, and the performances are way better than they should be. Which is why maybe it stings a little bit more that the care and attention wasn't given to stuff like shaky camera, because it feels like it sells the movie short, because the movie has such a huge heart, and it is really funny, and it's very cleverly plotted, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And it just lets it down a little bit. It's almost like the icing on the cake is a bit skew. And actually, when I watched it, I wrote in my notes that was actually quite refreshing, that they just left it in. It's kind of punk, and it's pretty fun. But walking away, I did think like, oh, imagine if it was just a little bit tighter visually, or if it was brushed up or remastered. I think it would be much, much better for that, which I wouldn't normally care much about at all, to be honest.
I think that a low-budget horror film that looks like this 5 years after Evil Dead, it's a little bit unforgivable.
Yeah.
The fact that that not everyone can be Sam Raimi, and Sam Raimi is a high bar.
Probably the highest bar. Like,
yeah, but I think, when people say things like you've got the same amount of hours in the day as Beyonce.
Yeah.
Like, fucking Charles Martin Smith has the same amount of hours as Sam Raimi. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, sure. I get you.
Like, there's no excuse.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably loads of excuses, but I
don't know them. We haven't been told them. Yeah. I mean,
I'm not interested to find out.
That's it. At the end of the day, we are just viewers and fans, right? So if we see something that we think kind of sucks and it takes a little bit away from the movie, I think it's valid to say that could have been better. Don't feel like we're being hypercritical of this very low budget, totally B-list horror movie. But because the counterbalance to that is how much it has going for it. It feels like a pretty fun adventure movie. It felt less like a horror to me and more of like a really dark comedy with some horrific moments. And that was refreshing, because my main worry going into this movie is that it was going to do loads of stuff that I really dislike about A, the 80s, and B, decadent 80s metal, which is just being really obnoxious and unlikable and entitled and lots of like flashy cash. And there's none of that whatsoever. It focuses on the stuff that I love about 80s rock and 80s metal, which is the fandom, the love, the passion, the performance, and ultimately the huge beating heart behind it all. So I think it just does that really, really well. It hooks me in and it keeps me entertained throughout.
Yeah, no, fair enough. What do you think about the music then? So the music's put together by Fastway, which is Fast Eddie from Motorhead, and Peter Way from UFO, who isn't in the band at this point, but his name is half the band's name, which is funny to me. I mean, Pete Way is only in the band for like a year,
right? In
like 1981 or something. So by the time they release anything, he's not in the band anymore. And the vocalist is Dave King, who you might recognise from Flogging Molly, which I think is hilarious.
It is just mind-blowing.
I think it says that Dave King goes where the money is, right?
Definitely. I mean, I'd seen some interviews with Dave King talking about his glam rock years, his psychedelic rock years, his heavy rock, close to metal years. And it does sound like the guy just desperately wanted a career in music, and he did whatever was popping at the time. He's that talented that he can sing like that, and he can also sing like a drunk Irish folk singer.
Yeah.
And he's getting on now, right? I mean, he's had several careers, and he's had several really successful music careers, and he deserves a ton of respect for what he's pulled off. But yeah, he was definitely jumping from genre to genre, which is something you see less of nowadays, I think. But I don't think that erodes his integrity in any way. It just shows me how fucking talented that guy is.
Yeah, he's a polyglot, or like he can just do anything, right?
Yeah. I mean, to answer your question, I have so little to say about the music in this movie because it's just so perfect. It's phenomenal. The standard of these songs, they have no right just being a movie soundtrack. It's absolutely flawless, I think. I mean, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I agree. I think, like we mentioned a little bit earlier, like the idea that songs that are written by screenwriters to go in movies, with very few exceptions, they are normally awful. But like, I mean, that's why you get a band to write the songs to go with this.
Yeah.
With a film like this, because you get something that means something to someone that has the flow of a real song, not just like, I've heard songs and I guess I know what they go like.
I know music.
I'm writing, I don't know, like the song in Freaky Friday is pretty good.
Right.
The Lindsay Lohan one, the songs in the Josie and the Pussycats, pretty fucking good. I'm not a big Fastway fan, particularly. I think they're pretty weak in the sort of the genre. I think the stuff that they were doing before Motorhead and UFO ultimately way better. Even though this might surprise you, given that my voice sounds like this, but I fucking hate Lemmy's vocals. Like, I just think it's bullshit gravel for the sake of it. And again, I realise what my voice sounds like. So
Your voice isn't bullshit gravel for the sake of it, for the record. That's just how you sound.
yeah, okay. Well, you know what I mean, though.
Yeah, I think the Lemmy hype. I mean, this is a tangent, but I never really understood the Lemmy hype until he died, and then it's a really sad thing, isn't it? But quite often you take people's existence for granted. Then when they die, you find out loads of amazing stuff about them. And I went to the Rainbow Lounge, and they have this like roped off chair where Lemmy used to sit, and they make him a whiskey and coke and constantly like top it up. And they've just sectioned off this part of like some of the most expensive real estate in all of LA, Sunset Strip, for Lemmy's ghost. And when I first saw it, I was like, fucking hell, like that's weird. And then you kind of read more about what he was all about and what he did for rock music. And yeah, I think I get the Lemmy thing a lot more now. Vocal style wise, I dig it. I think it's great. I thought Fastway sounded a bit too glam for your taste, for what I know of your taste.
I'm pretty into some glam.
Yeah. So what is it that doesn't do it for you about Dave King and the Blasters or whatever they're called?
It's hard to quantify. I think that when you put it in a movie, it sounds like real music. But when you put it against like Van Halen, it sounds like weak piss.
Got you. It's not beefy enough for what you like.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think in the movie, I can't think of songs that I would replace any of these songs with. What's great is it's all one band. You have this unified feeling through the whole movie, and you kind of. I mean, is it supposed to be Sammy Kerr's band?
Yeah, I think so.
Right. Well, that totally works for me. I think it's huge production value to me to have all these songs in this movie sounding so great and also placed really well. The trick is the placement, I think, a lot of the time. The sequencing of these tracks with the action in the movie is absolutely bang on. I just got no notes. I think it's fucking superb.
Like I would have preferred Wasp.
Right.
Obviously, they were going to cast Blackie Lawless, and Wasp are going to provide the soundtrack. Ultimately, I think that Fastway and Dave King, it's a bit clean, it's a bit glammy for the character.
Yeah.
Whereas like Blackie Lawless and Wasp, like they are dirt, horrible, angry, nasty, violent lyrics, like stage presence. And I think that would have really sold the Sammy Kerr music. Have you ever seen a movie called The Dungeon Master?
Yeah.
So there's a scene in that, do you remember, where the evil wizard guy sends the computer programmer into a concert in LA, and that's Wasp that are playing.
That's Wasp.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
And like his love interest is on stage in like the shackles and things, and Blackie Lawless is like scraping a knife all over her body. It's fucking great. Like, imagine he's the guy. Imagine he's Sammy Kerr. It's perfect.
You've got a different movie with a more aggressive, nasty sounding band providing the soundtrack, right? I think it steers things in a darker direction. You might have more of a horror movie.
Sammy Kerr is painted as this angry, bitter character. Like, he's famous, but he's angry and he's bitter. Why doesn't the music reflect that? The fact that the music's like, rock and roll, rocking after midnight, save my soul. Do you know what I mean? It's just a bit like, it just feels a bit, ooh, really? Is that?
I get you. Sammy Kerr would be better placed in a much heavier band based on his character, for sure. I mean, he'd be in a thrash band, surely. But I still think maybe if the music isn't meant to be his band, it's just a vehicle for the action. It's a rockin' good time soundtrack. Then it works even more for me. But it is hard to reconcile the two. I mean, a lot of rock stars had these huge, aggressive, aggro, evil images, and were actually total pussycats. So I kind of see the parity with other rock stars in that sense. But I completely agree. I think either a heavier soundtrack and you've got more of a horror movie, or the soundtrack you've got, but it's not Sammy Kerr's band. It's just rockin' tunes. One or the other. Yeah.
I do like it. I would love the heft of a Wasp.
The heft of a Wasp.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get you. I'm just glad it's not some bullshit like Motley Crue or something. Like, I'm just really glad it's not them.
Yeah.
It's
like Wasp are so good.
Yeah, I haven't heard a huge amount of Wasp.
You know what WASP stands for?
White Anglo-Saxon Protestant.
We are sexual perverts.
Is it really?
Yeah.
That's like in Dragnet, where pagan is people against goodness and normalcy. We are sexual perverts. Brilliant. All right, okay, you're selling me on this. Maybe it should have been Wasp.
They're so good. They're like they're in that sort of 80s glam metal thing.
Yeah.
Like where bands like Van Halen and Motley Crue were pretty big.
Yeah.
But they've got such an edge to them. They're so much more like nasty and like
They're proper dangerous.
Yeah, they feel, I don't know, like you can listen to Van Halen now and it all feels a bit quaint.
Yeah.
Whereas Wasp still feels edgy.
Okay. I'll pop it on the list.
Another thing that I wanted to talk about Trick or Treat was how generally confused I think the message of the film is.
Right.
Which is like, ultimately, I mean, you're familiar with the PMRC. They sort of, in the 80s, were crusading against so-called offensive material in music, Satanism,
It's typical,
sexiness, violence. Yeah. Some of it focused on backmasking in metal music. And it feels like this movie sort of like agreeing with them. The metal is bad and it's going to co-opt your kids' minds and turn them into Satanists or violent thugs or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Are you saying that because of the TV broadcasts specifically, where you've
because of the plot of the movie? Like, the plot of the movie is literally heavy metal corrupts the minds of these children,
right?
And violent things happen as a result. Like, there's a character, the girl in the demon car sex scene,
yeah,
who is literally seduced by metal. Like, it's not subtle. Like, she's literally actually seduced by metal.
Yeah.
It feels confusing that they're sort of like saying, yeah, this is a thing that could happen. Or this is a thing that could happen, but like we buy into this thing that Tipagore and the PMRC are saying.
Is it maybe doing the opposite of that and saying, look how fucking ridiculous these people are. They actually think that something like this could happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible. I guess, like, that could be the way that they're going with it. Like,
well, like, who in their right mind is watching this and being like, that could happen? You know, like, oh my God, my son, I must burn his records. I think it's more playful. I think it's more like, wow, people actually think that rock has the power to, you know, bring people back from the dead and corrupt our beautiful, innocent teenage girls. Let's show them how dumb they are by making that happen in a low budget rock movie and playing it out. It feels more amoral to me. Like, the morality tale here is more the friendship, the fact that Ragman is pretty respectful to the female character in the movie, the fact that, yes, rock does ultimately lead to the destruction and death of lots of teenagers, but in the dumbest way imaginable. And the rocker is undone by falling into a toilet. Do you know what I mean? It's all very silly.
Yeah.
And I think otherwise you don't have a movie. Do you know what I mean? If you don't play on that, the existing fear of rock, you don't have these antagonists played by good old Alice Nunn and Ozzy Osbourne. You don't have these religious zealots made to look ridiculous. You don't have them killed by rock's last chosen warrior, and you just end up with, you know, a pretty wet social commentary. So I quite like that it throws so much ridiculous, campy mayhem and nonsense into that storyline and that theme and that central conflict. But I can totally see how idiots would watch this and be like, see, rock is evil. You know, just the existence of this probably angers a lot of very conservative Christians, because it does play that stuff out. Surely that's the point. That's why all of this exists, right? To say fuck you to those people.
I just thought it was a bit confusing. It's like, I don't know, takes this narrative as read. Maybe it's like, yeah, like you say, like, if the thing that you're saying was real, it would look like this, and look how fucking dumb that is.
Yeah. What it doesn't do, which is great, is it doesn't do a fucking SLC punk and completely undermine the entire message of the movie, in that, you know, punk's not dead and then you sell out and become a lawyer or whatever happens at the end of that movie. I think it stays pretty true throughout. And what I love is that Eddie remains a very kind, compassionate, good friend, kind-hearted, troubled, and ultimately bullied dude who rises above it all. He realizes that revenge isn't the way. He realizes that he has the strength and the self-efficacy to move away from just following his hero who's gone mental beyond the grave. And he ultimately triumphs over the bullies, the people who judged him based on his appearance and his music taste, and over his own demented hero. It's a pretty triumphant arc, and I think Eddie is obviously the linchpin and the main character of the movie, but a really heartening tale of like self-discovery and teen angst resolved.
And his prize is that he gets to be Wolfman Jack.
Yeah, great ending, I thought.
One of the things that this film does that I really, really don't like, there's a scene quite early on in like the news footage where it shows Sammy Kerr talking at like a hearing in Congress, which is very similar to Dee Snider's testimony in the 1985 PMRC hearings, except it's super shallow.
You think so?
Yeah, I think in the film, I think the stuff that Sammy Kerr is saying, he's speaking directly to the kids that like his music. Whereas what Snyder was doing was being super eloquent and like amazing at those hearings and like changed adult minds with his testimony. And like what Sammy Kerr is saying is like, the kids love me. I'm a cool guy or whatever. I can't remember what he says. I didn't write it down.
I thought it was pretty right on. It's anti-censorship. It's you can't legislate art, which I thought was pretty bang on. It's a soundbite ultimately, isn't it? You can't do much with it.
Yeah, I think there was just something a bit more than what he said that I just thought was lame and like almost cheapened the Snyder testimony, which I'm a big fan of, obviously.
Yeah. I think it's more a vehicle for us to see that he's angry, and it's the first time we see him, live in the flesh outside of a poster, and we get a glimpse of him losing it. He starts off articulating something quite well, and then he starts pointing, and he gets really aggressive, and then it cuts, and he's dead. So I didn't have a huge problem with that. I am, as always, the ultimate sucker for just taking what's happening as great. And I thought, yeah, fuck him. And you thought deeper and obviously attributed it to something in real life. So yeah, I think, again, I was just enjoying that scene in the movie. But you're right. I think there's a real opportunity there. If your message is, anti-censorship, pro, the autonomy of the listener, and pro art, essentially, you could do something better there. But I don't think Sammy Kerr is the vehicle for that. I think he's the angry bad guy. So if your conflicting message there is exacerbated if you've got him being right on in life and just crazy evil in death, I don't think the motivation marries up as much.
Yeah, I just think there might be a better way of showing that than, in my opinion, cheapening something that was happening in real life that was important and valuable.
Yeah, it doesn't do much of a service to that in tribute, really, does it?
No.
Yeah. I tell you what is rad, though, in that same TV broadcast, when he's hopefully not a real snake, that would bum me out so much, but he's like licking the tongue of this snake and then he bites it in half and pours and smears all the blood all over himself. That's fucking gnarly.
Obviously, that's playing off the Ozzy Osbourne bat thing, which, didn't play out like that. But it is a gnarly fucking visual, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great. It's really cool. It's one of the first really awesome moments in the movie, I think, getting to see that. And again, Ragman loves this guy, but you don't really ever understand why, except the fact that he came from that high school. He's too nasty for Ragman, I think. He's too bad boy.
Well, like, if you look at the posters on Ragman's wall, like, you've got Anthrax, who are like... Anthrax are angry, but they're funny.
Yeah.
Like, they're like the self-aware thrash band, at this point, at least. And, like... Who else? You've got Raven, they're a bit soft. You've got Judas Priest, who are heavy, but, like, also pretty goofy with it.
Pretty dad rock, ultimately. Like, they look quote-unquote badass, but they're just kind of weak. I don't really like Judas Priest at all.
I mean, we might talk about Judas Priest later.
I respect Halford a lot, but I don't really like Judas Priest.
I think Judas Priest did their best and also heavier stuff in the early 90s, and it's amazing. But because if the Fastway songs are Sammy Kerr songs, then it fits because it's ultimately pretty weak in the genre. But I just don't buy that his songs would sound like that if he's this angry man. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I think anytime you make a movie about rockers, we talked about Wayne's World in our intro episode, and it grinds with you that Mike Myers does not understand heavy metal or rock culture at all. And it's not represented properly. I don't think it ever really is, especially not in a mainstream movie. Any subculture that is misunderstood by the mainstream is inherently doomed to be misrepresented in cinema. It just It's not going to drum up mass interest if it's accurate. It has to be either a sort of melodramatic version of it, or it has to play into the stereotype a little bit. And I think we get that in this movie. There are rock stereotypes left, right, and center. I'll tell you what's incredible is the metal shop scene. Eddie's wearing an Alternative Tentacles t-shirt.
Yeah, I noticed that. That's pretty cool, isn't it?
So great. Yeah. I mean, that's obviously not a world-renowned heavy metal label by any stretch of the imagination, but about as underground and anti-establishment as you can get. You know, that's really cool that that's in the movie. I think there's no way that's a mistake. You know, that's very deliberate, I think, and that shows an understanding of subcultural genres of music that are fighting the, you know, the oppressive voices of those in power. And I think I think it's really meaningful in the movie. I don't think it's just like a dumb wardrobe choice. I think it's great. I choose to believe that. that's what I'm saying.
Do you have anything else to add before we go to a quick break?
There's a bit where Ragman's mum is working out laying down by the side of her bed, and it really depressed me because that's what I do. She's laying down doing her like side splits, watching TV, and I was like, fucking, that's what I do.
Does it not really depress you that you kind of look like her boyfriend in his little Rambo outfit?
I like to think that I project that level of confidence. Yeah.
Will you give it up, man? Nobody's out there. We're alone. Oh no, there's somebody out there. I'm picking up all this crosstalk.
All right, we're back.
We are back. So what are you scoring?
Ragman for me does exactly what it sets out to do. Trick or Treat, Ragman, perfect movie in that sense. It's an incredibly fun rock-based horror adventure movie. So I give it 6 strings out of 6.
Nice.
I'm not saying like I'll go back and watch it all the time or anything, but it's really entertaining. It only has one little whoopsie in the middle, and that's just a personal preference thing. So I think in terms of movies doing what they say they're going to do, it fulfills the brief on the cover, well, my cover at least, and it totally smashes every kind of prerequisite that I want in what is essentially like the Goonies of hard rock.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Fair enough. I play bass and throw and stuff, so I will give it the amount of strings that I play out of the amount of strings on the instrument. So I'm giving it 2 out of 4.
2 out of 4 strings, which is nuts because I assumed that this would be one of your ride or die movies, and that I would think it was fine.
Okay.
We need to qualify these ratings. I don't love this movie by any stretch of the imagination. I just think it's really effective at doing what it sets out to. And for that, I have a huge amount of respect. I'll probably never watch it again. Maybe I'll watch it on Halloween with you. It's not ranking in any of my lists. It's not ticking those kind of boxes. I think it's incredibly effective at delivering everything it sets out to be.
So
and that
conversely, I love this film, but I think that I think it's riddled with problems.
Right.
So I'm trying to rate it based on my objective feeling rather than how it actually is.
Right.
How I actually feel about it.
Well, if I'm rating it on how much I like it, it's probably like a 5 out of 10.
Okay.
4 or 5 out of 10. If I'm rating it on how well it does its job, 13 out of 10.
Yeah, okay. So, well, if I'm rating it on actual objective, how I think this film is, it's 2 out of 4.
Mm-hmm.
But based on, like, if it fulfills its own brief, it's 11 out of 11.
These are the most confusing ratings I've ever heard in my life. I love it. Yeah, I don't... There's nothing about this movie I don't enjoy when I'm watching it, but it lacks the sort of memorable edge to be an Evil Dead 2, for example, which is perfect in every dimension for me. I hold a lot of these types of movies up against those types of movies. This feels like, it's in a different group altogether, but it's very fun. Despite its visual challenges, I do think it's well made, just in not in the strictly visual, camera auteurship kind of way.
Yeah, it's pretty tight in the edit, I think. Yeah.
No complaints about the editing. I think it's really well made in that regard, and I think it probably sticks to a pretty decent storyboard. It's obviously, the dialogue's really well written. It's totally believable in that regard.
So that's it. If you enjoyed the chat about Trick or Treat, there's a load of things that you can do to help the show out. You can support us on Patreon for just £3 or dollars a month. You can get access to bonus episodes, polls where you can suggest movies that we'll cover in the future, all kinds of other things incoming on the Patreon. You can follow us on Instagram. You can check out our musical projects.
Use your finger to tap the 5-star rating. That's the big one, because that helps us get heard more. Well, be honest, don't tap 5 if you didn't love it, but it's that easy. You tap it and you're done. So if you could do that, we'd love that. Thank you.
Yeah. And we'll see you next time, where we're going to talk about a little movie called Splinter from 2008.
I'm so excited. I love Splinter.
Yeah? No spoilers.
Mm-hmm. No spoilies. I tell you what, though, if you got a couple of quid kicking around and you want to hear us talk about heavy metal, 80s style, then, get on the Patreon, because that's going to be a fun chat.
It certainly is. We're going to do it right now. I'm going to go grab a beer, and then we're going to get down to it.
Round and round like rat.
Round and round like rat.
Good night, Jamie.
Good night, Sam.
See you in a minute.